not the least, is Tim Vaughn. Tim's going to be the, he's got a really tough race that he's running for this Republican, and he says he's going to yank the mic out of my hands, and that's okay. Here he is, Tim Vaughn.
Thank you, Mike. Before I get started, I'll briefly tell you a little bit about myself and introduce myself to you if I don't know you, but I think it's appropriate and I think it'd be well deserved. We need to give a round of applause for Darrell and Kimberly because they're either trying to keep an office or run for an office, and that takes a lot of courage to step out and do that. So please give them a round of applause. Well, I'm Tim Vaughn, and I believe around May 1st, Ms. Marty, I will be the new county chair for the Republican Party. I think that's when we take office. I'm in a fortunate position. I am unopposed. It's a good place, a good run that way. But you can also look at it as maybe no one else wants to mess with it. And maybe I was the one holding the short straw, but I'm willing to step up and do that. I got my idea to want to serve years ago watching my dad. I was born at Markham Hospital down here in Longview, Texas, a while back. My grandparents came here in the 30s when the oil came in White Oak. My dad retired from Texas Eastman in 41 years. He recently passed away a couple years ago, kind of unexpectedly. But I saw him work hard for a long time. And that was back before Eastman made a lot of money. And then they got their payroll up, and we struggled. And I watched my dad be on the school board at White Oak and be real concerned and watch the dollars. And, you know, White Oak was a little bitty community, but they were sitting on $1 billion of mineral values out there. And they were trying to keep the best education. But I got to watch a great example of a man who stayed involved and was plugged in, and that had a big impact on me. My uncle was a mayor in White Oak in the 70s, and I got to watch him be a part of something and be plugged in, because that was a big deal to me as I was growing up. And I guess when I was about 32 years old, a friend of mine, I was at the time serving as president of White Oak Boys Baseball. Well, let me tell you, that prepares you for anything. The mayor's deal was a piece of cake after a boys baseball president. One night, as an example, one night, it was about 10 o'clock, I got a phone call from a mother who requested that her son be put on another team because they had lost several games the prior year. Well, in the bylaws, you can't just keep moving on teams, or you got to follow the rules or whatever. And I had to explain to her, I said, ma'am, that the 1965 White Oak Little League Mets, we won 2 games in 2 years. And she was afraid her son being on a losing team was going to hurt him emotionally or harm him. And I told them, I said, for the most part, most people don't think I'm emotionally challenged or disturbed or upset, even though we only won 2 games in 1965 and 1966. But it was but those kind of that experience started me on the way to serving. And before I go into more of the things that I've done to kind of introduce myself to you, I think it's important, as I talked about sacrifice earlier. I'd like to recognize my wife, Dawn. If you wave. And we have some other elected officials here and their families, and I'll speak on behalf of them as well. It takes a lot of sacrifice at home for your family because she has to share me with a lot of people. Every time we came in 2 cars tonight because she knows chances are I'll be visiting on the way out, just like at church or whatever. But I want to recognize her and thank her for allowing me to get involved in the things I get involved in. But thank you, Dawn. If you see her leaving really fast and I'm chasing her, that means we're waiting on our 4th grandchild to be delivered, and it could be any minute. We had a trial run last night, so we're close. Okay? We have just a little bit more about our family. We have 3 kids. We have a son that is in the United States Air Force. He's actually stationed at Barksdale. He's a technical sergeant. Another son is a Texas A&M Aggie graduate. He now is working up in the bacon field up in North Dakota, and it's cold. And then we have a daughter who is walking up and down the street or something trying to make things happen to give us we already have a 6-year-old grandson with her. So we have a great family. We're very fortunate. We're members of Mobley Avenue Baptist Church. We just love and get plugged in there where we worship. But as I was starting to serve, I was elected. Someone asked me to run for city council when I was maybe 32 years old at White Oak. So I was a hometown boy, and I said sure, and I had an opponent. It was an open seat, so we went out and put up signs, and we did all the things, we did, and it was a pretty exciting deal. I mean, my hair was really dark. I was pretty excited. I was going to go change things. I was pumped. And I was able to win that election and served a couple of terms, and then a friend of mine, my friend, said, you ought to run for mayor. I'm not going to run next year. So I signed up, and 12 years later, I found another friend that could take my place. He only took him 4 years. So I was able to serve 6 terms out up there at White Oak. And hence my hair. It's a little different color. When you're a hometown boy and you're mayor of your city, you go through a lot of interesting conversations with folks. I know one time I was down the track running, and I don't know where this little lady came out of, but she just showed up. I mean, I was going around the bend, and there she was. And so she stopped me, and she started asking me about the mosquitoes in her backyard, and we needed to go do something about it. So I started asking her more questions, and I said, well, there's not a right-of-way back there. There's not a sewer line. There's no, the city can get back there. It's private land. We can't get back there. Well, and she didn't like my answer, and she pretty much tore my butt up and ripped me a pretty good one. So that was a big learning experience on that. But that's, I signed up for that, and that's okay, because I found some friends that had some sons that needed some part-time work. So I sent them over to her and said, won't you mow on that? Because she had a little old draw, kind of a creek in her backyard in the water. It was a rainy summer for that time. But a lot of things happen when you're in your hometown and you're serving, but I enjoyed it. Clearly, I kept signing up for it. And then I stepped down back in 2008. A friend of mine that I grew up with says, I want to do this when you're done. So I called him the next day, and I said, I'm done. Sign-up period is Monday. And he goes, I didn't mean now. I said, well, I did. Sign-up is Monday. So he signed up, and I was able to step down and take a break. And he had an opponent. Our police chief actually ran against him because he was mad about. There's always people mad, and they want to run for whatever. And so, but anyway, so I was able to put my time in and serve. But it allowed me along the way to meet a lot of great people and to work a lot of relationships. And that's what's real important. If it was, White Oak's not an island. Longview cannot do it all by itself, even though it's the hub and a very thriving hub. But we were able to work together. I know one year when we had a drought going on, and the worst thing you wanted to do was to tell your neighbors, oh, your address is an odd number. You can't water but on Wednesdays and Saturdays. You weren't the most popular person on the street. But we were able to work with our friends at the Longview City Hall, and we came up with a water plan where we shared some things, and we tapped in at 4 locations their water lines. So when ours got low, we had an alternative source. Part of just working together. Another thing we did one time, we worked with the school, which is a big draw at White Oak, and there was a big push for a library to be built in the school, in the city. But that could cost several $100,000, plus there's not a lot of land in 13 square miles in the city of White Oak. And so I started working with the superintendent, and they were doing a remodel at the school, and we ended up taking an old cafeteria in the city, put in some initial capital, and then we would pay a little bit each year. So now the city of White Oak and the school share a school community public library that's open 3 nights a week and Saturdays because of a joint effort to try to maximize some tax dollars, but yet still provide a quality of life, especially like a library that people could go to. And at the time, there were only 4 in Texas that had a joint school community library. And I think those things are important to try to work together. I want to do that as the chairman of this Republican Party. We're going to work together. We're going to grow this party. Because if we just sit here in chairs, what's going to happen is the blue team on the other side of the aisle is growing by default. And so we've got to stop that. You just give me 15 minutes with somebody and let me visit with them. And they'll find out, well, maybe they believe like we do. Maybe they are conservative and talk about our values. But we got to have a shot at them. You know, we can't hide them and shun them away. But we want to recruit. But we got to recruit the right people to make sure they understand what the core values are about. And so that will be one of my goals. Let me just stop a minute here. I want to thank Keith Rother. I don't know if Keith's here, but give him a hand. You know, Keith has been serving 6 years as your county chair, and he's done a great job. And it's a lot going on. And we started visiting this summer about the possibility if I'd be interested in doing that. He'd already kind of did an end around with some of my friends to start kind of getting me to thinking about it. But there's another person here, Miss Marty Ryan. Would you give her a hand, because the work she puts in for the local party. And for the record and publicly, please stay on and help. It's important. But I'm looking forward to working with Miss Marty here in the future and in future elections as we continue to grow the party and try to do what we can for our local party. Because 1 minute, I got it. No problem. But anyway, what I want to get you to know about is I'm just big on serving, and for y'all to come out on a Monday evening when it's cold and to be plugged in and to be a part of this process. That's what we got to have. And then out of this becomes other leaders and ideas that leaders get from you. So I encourage you to keep this meetings and keep going and keep recruiting more people so they can hear our message and hear the conservative message, because we're fighting a battle where they're growing on the other side, just coming in. And so let's get the message out. Let's be positive, and let's make this a better place. I'm Tim Vaughn. I hope I can work with you. If you don't know me, come up and talk to me. I'll give you my cell phone number. Mike, Cindy, thank you all for having me. Okay.